Hello and welcome to Sacred Mindshift Circle. I'm your host, Dahlia Deborah Donalds, and today we are joined by Erin Brown, a frequency and clarity coach whose work bridges cutting-edge metaphysics with grounded science. Erin has over 25 years of experience in both the medical and metaphysical fields, beginning her professional journey in ophthalmology. She holds an undergraduate degree in psychology and a master's in health professions education. She's a certified spiritual life coach, intuitive guide, and energy channeler. energy channeler. Her work has reached global audiences through her popular TikTok presence as Consciously Erin, where she talks daily about the Schumann resonance. Erin is also the author of The Soul Quest, a self-guided life coaching program that weaves together psychology and spiritual perspectives for transformative personal growth. Welcome, Erin.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
Okay, so thank you so much for joining me. I always watch your videos on TikTok, and I'm always interested in what you have to say every day to see if it coincides with like what I'm going through in the moment. And I wanted to invite you on today because I know that a lot of people um, are on their spiritual journey. Some of them are just starting. They don't even know what the Schumann resonance is. And I just wanted to invite you so that we can begin to break it down. But before we go into it, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you even began doing this online and what motivated you, what interests you.
Right. I was a nurse in ophthalmology for about 25 years, and then I transitioned into teaching at a medical school. And when I was teaching at a medical school, I was diagnosed with a rare blood condition called APS. And this is one of those conditions that if you don't take care of it, it can take care of you. You know what I mean? And so for 2 years, I went through all this treatment, and then COVID hit, and I got sent home from work, and I had nothing to do one day. So I thought, oh, I'm going to research this disease, right? So I get into the library and start researching this disease. And what I found out was that there was criteria that I did not meet. And so I started to question if I even had this. I take all this information. I went to my specialist and showed it to him. And he, of course, looked at me like most doctors and said, I'm the boss. You listen to me. I want you to follow this, whatever. But because I'm literally teaching brand new doctors, I thought to myself, nope, we're not doing that. So I left his office. I went back to my primary care doctor's office, and he literally took about 30 minutes with me to look through my records for this test, figured out it wasn't there, ordered the test, assuring me, I'm sure it's fine. Don't worry about it. I'm sure it's fine. Now, keeping in mind, for the last 2 years, I've been incredibly anxious because this blood disorder requires treatments that thin your blood. So I would bruise very easily. I'd bleed very easily. I couldn't eat certain foods. I was losing weight. I didn't feel well. So now go to my primary and he does this test. And sure enough, I didn't have it. And when he told me that, it dissolved everything I think I thought I knew about the world, because at that point I was so sure of science. I was so sure that science was the answer, that it was always right, and here it was wrong. And when that happened, I started to go through this cycle of, well, if that's wrong, what else is wrong? And it's hard to explain the feeling, but everything literally just fell down around me. And for about 2 weeks, I couldn't function very well. I didn't go to work. I didn't talk to anybody. I didn't do anything because I didn't feel like I could function. My brain wouldn't stop. And at some point, my daughter, God bless her little soul, brought me a meditation. And she said, hey, Mom, I think you should try this. Nothing else is working. Try this. So I did. I put on a blindfold and earmuffs and all this stuff. And I go in and I do this meditation, and my world literally exploded. And I was seeing very visceral images, like they were right in front of me, as if I could reach out and touch them. My body was going through these intense hot, cold pulses. I don't know how else to explain it. I was hearing things. It was as if suddenly this veil we all talk about was completely gone. And I was so overwhelmed with everything. And that kind of sparked everything for me. With the Schumann, this is a fun conversation. So I have a friend who was a meteorology student when I was going through all of this, and I met him for lunch one day, and I was sitting there and I was talking just kind of more to myself as we're eating lunch. And I'm like, oh my God, all this stuff, blah, blah, blah. And he just looked up and he goes, you ever heard of the Schumann? And I go, what? And he goes, you ever heard of the Schumann resonance? And I go, no. And he goes, listen, I don't study this, but it's a measurement of energy coming into the earth. And if you think about it, human bodies are just giant walking sacks of conductive material. So maybe you're being affected by this energy in some way. So I went home, and for 365 days, every single day, I got up, I wrote down how I felt versus what the graph looked like, and I kept that data for a whole year. The end of that year, I took all that information and I went into the university where I worked and I fed it into like a statistical analyzer AI thing that we use a lot. And sure enough, it came out with a bell curve. And in science, a bell curve is an indication that there's something going on here. But for me as a scientist, the next step would be peer review. Well, where am I going to send that? Like, I could write the paper. No one's going to publish the paper, right? It's such a fringe science. So I thought, well, who are my peers? My peers are you. My peers are on TikTok. My peers are on YouTube. So I made the first video legitimately not expecting anyone to even watch it and just put it out there. And all of a sudden I had thousands of people messaging me and saying, oh my gosh, you are right. This is exactly how I feel. And then from there, it just kind of grew. All of my interpretations of how the energy is affecting or could be affecting you on a physical level comes from my own personal observations, experience, and intuition, combined with the idea of the science behind it. So, people kind of get tangled up in the idea, well, how come I don't feel the same way you do? It's only because you're a different frequency. That's all. It's not good or bad. You're just different. I can only tell you my own experience. So that's why I offer that. But that's where it started a couple of years ago now.
Okay. So now so you looked at the numbers and you checked everything and you saw that there was a correlation. Now, when you give your information and we talk about the collective, right?
hmm
Overall, how does the energy coming from the earth affect the collective? You talk about frequency. Can you explain a little bit more about it?
Sure. So the Schumann frequency is actually a set of harmonic frequencies that's in the ionosphere of the Earth. This is around in our atmosphere. It's a level of our atmosphere. And this can build up charge based on a bunch of different things. CMEs from the sun, tectonic activity, lightning strikes, all of this. You have to think of it kind of like when you ring a bell, right? All of these things are like ringing bells in our ionosphere. This energy spreads out in the ionosphere, and we as individuals who are, again, basic walking sacks of water, are conductive material. So for me, it makes sense logically that if all this electricity and electromagnetic energy is being dropped into our atmosphere, why wouldn't it affect us, right? The way it affects us can be different based on where you are in your journey, what you are working on, where your frequency level is. It's 100 different things. There are two different main types of energy that I look at on the graph. On the Italian graph, it usually comes from the bottom up, right? This is a different type of measurement. When I'm looking at the Tomsk graph, the one that's from the top down, that's measuring ELF, and the one in Italy is measuring ULF, I believe. So they're two different frequencies, first of all. The one on the Tomsk graph, the main one I talk about, this is what's in the ionosphere that's being rung by the CMEs and all that sort of stuff. This is coming down this way. The Italian graph is more measuring the Earth-based activity. That's why it's more release related for whatever reason. That's why it was shown to me that way. So it comes from many different places, but it all kind of conglomerates together in the magnetosphere and spreads out a little bit.
And overall, like, especially now, because we are going through a very big, I feel, spiritual and I guess energy change or energy shift.
Oh, big time.
I really do feel like we're going, or we are in the 5D, so we're just kind of like integrating or working our way into all of these energies coming in. Explain to me how you've noticed these changes over maybe between like 2020 to now. Like, have you noticed a significant amount of like changes in the graphs and what they're showing?
Yes, there's been a big increase, but it's important to note we're also in the middle of, towards the end of our solar maximum period. This is a cycle that our sun goes through. I want to say it's every 11 or 12 years, something like that. I don't have the exact number, but this is a normal cycle for our sun. This particular cycle is very intense. And over the last, I'd say, year or so, it has gotten even more intense, which is a bit unusual because we are coming to the end of our solar cycle. So we should be sort of not having as many explosions as we're having, but knowing that everything is connected, right? Look at the activity on the earth itself. Look at the planetary alignments that are happening. Look at all these things. And when you put all that together, the sun is energy, right? But if you think about energy like a plant, right? Plant receives sun, its energy goes through photosynthesis, becomes sugar. We're not much different. We receive energy from the sun, we go through meditation, and it becomes information, right? This is how that works. When the Schumann is active like this, it's in a supportive role. The sun is in a supportive role to help awaken more and more people, to help more and more people see that there's something out there, that there's more to the story, all that sort of thing. I mean, what I like to tell people is the planet is upgrading her signal. The planet is a living thing. It's going through its own evolution. The human nervous system, as we are members of this planet, must also upgrade to stay in alignment with the planet. The sun is offering the energy and the information that's allowing us to go with that upgrade rather than fight against the upgrade. Just like when you look at the earth, there's a big crack in Africa now. There's going to be a new ocean there soon. You know, all of these things are happening on the planet itself, reflected in us as the individuals.
So when these things are occurring, you always talk about, like, for example, sometimes like me myself, let's talk about today, for example. We're on
Sure.
February 4th, 2026. And like I'm feeling very tired. Other people I've heard in the comments or read in the comments, they're saying that they're having headaches.
Right.
What's going on there with more or less how these energies begin to affect everyone? Because if everyone's on different frequency, because sometimes I wonder, because I say to myself, like, well, I'm on a different frequency, but there are things that maybe I'll experience, and like you said, other people won't experience. And then lately, it's like everyone's kind of experiencing similar things, maybe to different degrees. Just tell me a
Mhm.
little bit about how our bodies are being affected right now, especially with all of these changes.
Right. So the energy we're receiving from the sun in the form of the Schumann, right? The measurement of the Schumann isn't forceful in nature. It's more like a vitamin, right? So it's going to impact you where you need it most. So that may be different for each person. So we all have this chakra system. And if you have a crown chakra that's more active than your root chakra, the crown chakra is what's going to be receiving the energy more often than the root. It just depends on what you're working on in your energy. When I talk about things like this integration energy that we're in today specifically, that's difficult for my body to work through because we are receiving both new energy and release energy at the same time, and it kind of pulls like this, and it tires out your physical body because your physical body is responding to these changes that are being offered through this energy. And sometimes that looks like you suddenly feel angry or sad or whatever. It just rises to the surface because this energy comes from the sun and says, here's a little vitamin to help you get rid of this, or a little bit of something to help you with this. There are plenty of people who are walking around who choose not to be open to receiving that vitamin. That's completely on them. Again, source is never going to force anything on you. So if you choose that I don't want to receive this, you're not going to receive this. Or if most people are walking around with their fingers in their ears and their eyes closed, they're not going to be aware that maybe I feel this way because of this, right? It's kind of like, it's hard to explain, but it's kind of like the magic paintings, right? You know, when you're a kid and you let your eyes relax and suddenly you can see the horse in the background or whatever. That's kind of how this energy is. Until you notice that it's there, you may not realize how it's affecting you. But once you notice that it's there, you cannot unsee how it's affecting you. And everybody's just different. It's not forceful at all. It's just being offered as like a helper, and it kind of soaks into whatever it is that's most active or that needs it the most in you at that moment. When I'm offering in the morning, I'm just telling you the pattern that I've seen and how it has affected me over time. Because I can't speak to anybody else's experience, I can only tell you mine. What I have found is that for whatever reason, I tend to be incredibly sensitive to this. And what I tend to feel, a majority or a lot of people feel similarly. And I don't necessarily think that the people who don't feel the same way are bad or indifferent. You're just in a different place. Maybe you have something else that needs your attention. You know, if we have new energy coming in and you're working on leaving your job, you're working on release. So that new energy is not going to force its way in and say, hey, stop working on the release. What it does is it kind of tends to form a sort of pocket around your own energy system. As you let go of that release, that new energy that's been waiting for you will start to soak in. And people feel this as anxiousness or nervousness or restlessness. I need to do something, but I don't know what. I need to do something, but I don't know what. All that is feeling the space between your energy and the energy we're receiving as it's waiting to integrate. And the closer it gets to integrating, the more you can feel that until it finally settles into your system.
And another thing that you were also talking about, because I think lately they've been saying as well that the solar flares have been really off the charts. I think in the period of like 24 hours, they were like 26 or
Yeah,
something.
the last 72 hours.
72 hours.
Yeah.
So how is that affecting us?
So what that it affects me a lot, right? So I have in my work, I have run into many people who feel these flares as they leave the sun. When the flares happen, there's all these active charged particles that are ejected into space, right? And the planet is in space, so it's in sort of the projection zone of this. It's not always, these flares are not always earth facing, but that doesn't mean that the energy doesn't sort of get to the earth, right? And the more sensitive you are to it, the more early you're going to feel it. Some people feel these flares as they happen on the sun. Some people feel it as the energy enters the earth. I tend to not feel it until it arrives, but that doesn't mean that. But the sunspot that's super active has had so many flares over the last like 72 hours that it has supercharged our ionosphere. So again, going back to the bell ringing thing, this is an analogy like having 100 bells being rung every 30 seconds. It's just building and building and building and building. And when you look at the graph, when we look at the heartbeat graph, you can clearly see it holding on to the charge. Where this is leading, I don't know, but I can look at the planet and look at all of the discourse on our planet right now. The sun is sending us energy to sort of fuel this, bring it out to the surface, get it out, get it out, get it out. The earth is going through a major purge. We as a collective humanity are going through a major purge. The sun is going through a major purge. Everything happens together. But for me, it's amazing to watch these flares. Like, I don't know if you've ever heard of a Carrington event, right? A lot of people ask me about this. So I don't have the year specifically, but it was back when we still only had like telegraphs, okay? So in the 1800s, we had an event on our sun during a solar maximum where there was a giant solar flare that was resultant in a huge CME, a coronal mass ejection that was sent towards the earth. It fried all of the telegraph wires. Like everything sparked and none of it worked anymore. So you can imagine if something like that were to happen now, where everything is electronic, there is the potential that it could fry the grid, right? And I think there's a lot of fear around that. A lot of people saying, oh my God, what if that happens? This is the great solar flash or whatever it is. I don't have anything to say about that, but what I can tell you is what I'm observing is things are primed, right? The ionosphere is heavily charged. We have a super active sunspot that literally just today became earth facing. All of those flares have not been earth facing. Now it's earth facing. And we have another super active region on the sun that's going to come a few days after this and again be earth facing with all this activity. So all of these things to me feels almost like a building to something. What that something is, I don't know. But when you look at the human collective, also things are building, building, building to something, right? It's kind of like there's been mystics and spiritualists saying for years that there's a new age coming, there's a new age coming. This is the dawn of that new age. This is where things start to change. And the sun is simply offering us support in the form of energy to help us do this. How it affects us on an individual level just depends on where you are, what you're focused on, and that sort of thing.
And besides this, so do you think that it's possible that if these solar flares, like as you said, like everything is like seemingly reaching a climax, or do you think it could be something like a big blackout or like the 3 days of darkness? Is that the kind of thing that people are worried about?
That's what a lot of people are worried about. And I will tell you, it is certainly possible. I mean, based on the conditions that we're looking at, it is possible. I personally don't have any intuitive feel about it. I have not been shown anything other than whatever the transition, like I have been shown that there's a transition coming, right? I've been shown this. That's one of the first images I got when I had my awakening experience in that closet when I was doing that meditation. I literally saw the planet Earth suspended in space in front of me. I felt like I could reach out and touch it. And I watched it divide like a cell, right? It divided like a cell into two separate Earths, and then they started to move away from each other. Now, I don't necessarily believe that there's going to be another physical Earth, right? I don't know. But the divide in us as humanity is surely happening just like that, right? And now I feel like we've reached that point. So for me, what I've been told is there is a huge transition coming, and it's going to be very uncomfortable for a lot of people because a lot of people are very anchored in their physical reality. And when you choose not to believe that there's something else out there, when you are confronted with evidence that there is, it kind of breaks your brain for a minute. And that's what happened to me. I was so anchored in science that when I suddenly realized there was something else out there, it broke my brain. And so that's what I think is coming. And when people talk about the 3 days of darkness, I almost feel like that's what it's going to be like, is after whatever happens, the time period afterwards where people are sort of going, oh my God, what happened? What does this mean? What is this? What is this? And regardless if that's a great solar flash from the sun, the landing of extraterrestrials on the White House lawn, I mean, I don't know what it is, but something is happening and something is going to change. And I think it's more about those of us who are in the Awakened Collective during that time, staying steady, holding the light and say, it's okay. I've already been here. Let me help you. Let me help you. I think that's why there's waves of awakening, so that each wave can help the next. That way it's not as overwhelming. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. And a lot of people talk about that, and it sounds basically like, the same concept that, the 3D focused people are going to kind of be in one timeline, let's say. They're going to be focused in one area, and then the ones that are rising in the 5D, we're going to be on a different consciousness or a different frequency to some degree, right?
Right.
Like you said,
Well,
it's
I think you can do that. Even
yeah,
we do it now. I mean, think about
yeah.
it, right?
Mhm.
So to give you an example, I have a friend who she lives in a very rural area of Virginia. She doesn't have cable TV. She doesn't watch the news. She literally is outside 19 hours a day, right? She had zero idea of what was happening in Minnesota. Zero. She was completely in a reality where that was not real for her, right? But once she heard about it, now it's part of her reality. And that's what I think people need to realize is it's not necessarily that we're going to be on two different planets, but it's the choices we make to focus on something better that changes your reality. And I also think it feels like a migration of some kind. Those of us who are more awakened and more aligned with our dreams and that sort of thing will find ourselves migrating to areas where there's other people like that. And then naturally, we move away from the things that don't resonate with us. And eventually, what happens is whatever's happening over here with, let's say, John Deere, right? Just picking a name. Let's say John Deere decides that he's very anchored in this anger and he's not going to embrace this new world, right? Once we move away from that, unless we are looking at him, he is not part of our reality. And I think people need to realize it's that simple. It's that simple. Making a choice consciously on where you put your focus changes the reality in which you live absolutely 100%. And it happens right now. And when we're talking about a new earth, that's what it feels like to me, is those of us who are aligned in the same ideas coming together to create community and sharing and loving and caring and all these things, while those people who choose to stay in this very materialistic world, they can do that, but they're going to do that over there, right? That's what it feels like to me.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. And I think that's what it's going to turn out also to be in my opinion from things that I've seen with people around me, because you just can't change certain people overnight. So either they're going to eventually ascend if that's what they're supposed to do in this lifetime, other or they'll just be where they are and that's it. And I've come to terms with I've come to terms with
Right.
that.
Well, it's
Um,
hard because we love them. You know, I mean, myself,
yeah.
I have family members. I have an uncle. I love him very much. He is so far from where I am that it's just ridiculous. I can't even sometimes have conversations with him. And it very much feels like he is not understanding me. And it's because he's not. He is quite literally on a different frequency level than I am. So when I'm trying to talk to him, he quite literally, he can hear me, but he cannot understand what I'm saying. And it feels to him like I'm not making sense. And that's the dissonance between the two frequencies. That's what it feels like in real life when you meet up with someone who's on a totally different frequency than you. You can communicate, but you can't communicate. I can hear you, but I can't understand you, kind of thing. You know what I mean? And I think the more that becomes uncomfortable, the more we get tired of, I'm tired of trying to explain myself to this fool, right? We're going to start moving away to the people that do understand us and who are on the same frequency. And all those other people can stay where they are. And that's fine. They can choose that life. But we're going to move to a place where we feel more understood. And that happens all the time right now. But very famously, Esther Hicks has said, you cannot be sick enough to make somebody feel better. You cannot be broke enough to make them feel wealthy. It doesn't happen because it's an inside job. And often, even to punctuate that, maybe you point someone out to something out to someone, and then they're mad at you because you pointed it out to them. Then they're blaming you. Well, that's the same thing to me as being in a dark room with someone and I turn the light on and they realize that their clothes are dirty and now they're going, oh my God, now my clothes are dirty because of you. No, your clothes were dirty the whole time. I just turned the light on. Now you see them and you're mad at me because you're aware of it, right? Accountability in the human race is ridiculous. Nobody wants to take accountability, but every single person is their own problem. You are the problem in your life. And when you realize that, it's empowering because you can say, well, if I'm the problem, I can change that. And then your life starts to change. And it is magical when it starts to happen, but it's hard to get the ball rolling. You know, it's like pushing a giant stone up a huge hill. But once you get it going, it really starts to show itself.
Yeah, I think a lot of people just don't want to do the inner work. They want to just have like all the benefits and they don't want to have to actually take the time, do the grounding, do the meditation, see, go through that dark night of the soul and all of these kind of things. They don't want to do the work sometimes. And then that's where I think a lot of that's where it draws the line between those that are, I'm not saying worthy, but those that are ready
Right, right.
for the change and the shift and those that still need to, work on it.
Yeah,
So,
accountability is a thing. You know, you cannot, it is spiritual bypassing to think that I can just meditate and everything's going to be better. You can meditate and things will start to get better, but eventually what's going to happen is your own triggers are going to come up. It is your responsibility. It is no one else's responsibility to tippy toe around all the eggshells you dropped on the floor, right? You are responsible for your triggers. But it is so empowering when something no longer has control over your day. If you have an intense trigger, if that trigger goes off, it has ruined your whole day. You've just handed all of your power over to whatever that is. But if you can recognize, I have a trigger, I am responsible for this, and work through whatever it is that gave you that trigger, the next time it happens and you don't have that response, now you're the one in control. And that's where people don't want to do the work because they feel like it's someone else's fault. It's always someone else's fault. And while you may not be able to change the circumstances that brought this trigger about, you can 100% change how you respond to this and get better control of that.
but I'm going to go ahead and put up the graph now. So I'm going to
Okay.
share it. And one moment, let's just share it. So All right. So tell me about this graph. This is the graph for February 4th. I'm sorry,
Mhm.
yeah, February 4th today.
Mhm.
So if someone were to look at this graph now, right?
Yes.
Tell me what would they see? What do you notice in the graph? What is it telling us?
Okay. So the first thing that stands out to me is the smear of energy across the top. It's the green with the white across the top. This is disorganized energy entering the system. This is like a slow drip from the faucet rather than like a big dump of energy that we see in the big white streaks, right? So what this is showing me is on this graph from the 2nd of February until now, we've had this steady drip of incoming new energy. It's not forceful, it's very slow and steady. It's all that white energy that's mixed in up here. This is the new energy and it's slowly coming in. Can you see my cursor? I don't know if you can. These lines, these very thin lines coming down here, this is new energy, right? This is what I call integration. And the only reason I call this is because over the time of my observation, this is what I started to see as a pattern that when these lines show up is when my body is physically tired, but my mind is going 100 miles an hour. So we have the incoming new energy, which I associate with new ideas, starting new projects, fresh feeling energy, all that, coupled with the dripping in of this integration, trying to get your body on a physical level to also allow this energy in. So that's the main thing on this graph here.
And I think also you said once that like these lines are like seemingly separating, or that it seems as if there are like three different lines.
So there's a bunch of harmonics in here. So this is a measure of about 5 harmonics, right? So you see this line right here. This is a harmonic. This is a harmonic right here.
I don't see the cursor. I don't know. I
Oh,
don't
okay.
know.
So the green line running horizontally across the middle,
Mhm.
that's a harmonic, and there's several of those. So they're just different. If you think of music, harmonics, they're complementary frequencies that are working together. These I don't know about separating, but they're kind of. I don't know how to answer the question because I'm not sure what exactly you were talking about because I don't remember.
So I think what I was trying to say is that before that it seemed to be more like closer together, but it seems
Oh,
now,
more organized. I got you.
yeah.
So
Mhm.
this is what I call disorganized. This is like a drippy faucet. The
Mhm.
way the energy looks right now is like a drippy faucet. It's a constant, slow, steady infusion of energy into the atmosphere. That's different than when you look at the big white blobs that come in. That's organized, like dumping the whole cup of water out at once, right? This is much more like a slow, steady drip. So that's the difference between there. They happen sometimes simultaneously. You'll get a big dump at the same time as you get a slow drip, but the slow drip like this is not common at all. This hasn't happened in the years that I've been observing this. I've only seen this a few times, and I can't really point to any one thing that I say, oh, this is why, but I've only observed this a few times, this particular pattern.
So another thing I was going to ask you really quick is also when we get those long black lines in the chart, that basically means a time jump, isn't it?
It's a
Or
timeline jump, correct?
can you explain that a little bit?
Sure. So we as individuals are all on our own timelines. You change timelines hundreds and hundreds of times a day based on your focus. But as a collective, because we are all focused in the same general direction and have certain things that we can agree on is our reality, right? When we have a timeline jump like that, what that is an indication of is that enough people have put momentum behind a change, that it sort of like a railroad track, switching tracks just a little bit. It's not necessarily jumping from 5D to 3D is just the little switches in between the realities. And what's happening, again, between the awakened and the unawakened collective is we're starting to peel away from them more and more. These timeline jumps that I see on here are related to the awakened collective. It's the building up of more and more awakened people, moving the awakened collective closer and closer towards that perceived golden age, or whatever you want to call it, the new earth, or whatever you want to call it. This is just us moving more and more in that direction.
Okay, great. So we've seen the graph now, and I know you also, as you said, you use the Italian graph, you use other graphs, but this is the one that's maybe most popular for most people, and I think easier for people to digest because I think I've seen how you show the other ones, but I guess that one, like the Italian graph, you'd probably need to have more knowledge of, I guess, more of the concept of the
Well,
frequencies, the
Well,
energy.
for me, I use the Thompson graph because that's what I did my observations on, right? When I was introduced to this, when my friend introduced me, that's the graph he showed me. I didn't even know there were other graphs for a long time. And then when I started to try to read the other graphs, it didn't feel the same because this is where my observations are based on. So that's why I use this graph, not because of any other reason, just because this is what I'm familiar with. That's all.
And so now that you've explained all of this to us, and I want to go a little bit more back into your intuitive side because
Mhm.
you are a spiritual coach, so you help others, and you've written your book about it, and I think you give classes also
I
to,
do all kinds of stuff.
yeah,
Yeah.
you help others that are beginning to awaken. Tell me how we can use all of this information, and tell me how you help others to use it as well so that they can
Sure.
also raise their vibration.
Sure. So for me, I am a frequency coach. Frequency modulator is the best way to explain it. The way my energy works is through inspired conversation. So if you and I are having a conversation, what happens is my energy reaches out and grabs yours and brings it to me, right? It entrains your frequency to mine. Kind of like the best image is when you're learning to ride a bike and you have someone running behind you and holding the seat. That's my job, is I'm going to hold the seat and give you some steadiness until you feel steady, and then you go off on your own. But when I'm talking to someone, the way it works for me is I'm looking at you, like I'll just use you. I'm looking at you. I see frequency. I quite literally, with my eyeballs, see frequencies all around you. Depending on how broad the band of frequency is and how fast it's vibrating, tells me how close in it is to your now, right? Probability, possibility versus probability, right? I pick up very much on the probabilities. So what happens is people come to me and they say, hey, I'm feeling stuck. I don't feel like I can get out of this. And through our conversation, I'm able to give them insight on why they might be feeling stuck and maybe some next steps to take. The important thing is learning to listen to yourself. Man, we've all been trained that we don't know. We don't know anything. We've all been told we're dumb and that everybody else is smarter than us. So it's really, really hard to start to listen to yourself. I'm just there to hold the seat for a hot second while you get comfortable listening to yourself, and then you're going to go off on your own. So that's kind of how it works for me. For everybody working on things, listen to your body, pay attention. Your body is your biggest, easiest tool. You are a giant walking sack of conductive material. Pay attention to the way your body feels. If you start having a conversation with someone and you start getting super uncomfortable in your skin, like your skin is itchy or something, that is a signal from your body that something isn't resonating with you and you need to do something about it, right? Emotions are just energy in motion. The way you feel in a moment is an indication of how aligned with your base frequency you are. So if you're having a conversation with someone and you're getting angrier and angrier and angrier, you're getting farther and farther and farther from what's true for you. It's an indication in your body of what's meant for you or right for you and what's not for you. So the best advice I can give to people is just start paying attention to you, pay attention to how you feel, and then give yourself the respect to not say, well, I'm crazy, I'm making it up, blah, blah, blah. Don't be mean to yourself, give yourself a second. It takes a minute.
And what do you think? I guess that would be some of the challenges that a lot of people have when they're beginning to notice things or when they're even
Yes.
thinking a little bit outside of the ordinary about these concepts. When it comes to I guess I know you have a big following online because obviously that's where we're attracting all of the people that think the same way. In your own personal life, besides your daughter, because she was the one that, that I guess was already on that train. I mean, did you have like any kind of spiritual beliefs? Like, were you religious? Were you Catholic? Were you like you just kind of like she just also just
Well, so I was not raised in any particular religion. I had a grandfather who was a preacher, but I mean, I wasn't raised in the church. When my children were young, I wanted a good framework for morals, right? So I reached out and joined the Baha'i Church, and a lot of people have never even heard of them, and there's a reason. The Baha'i will never evangelize to you because they believe that if it's meant for you, you'll find them. They're very soft, very gentle. They teach from all of the major religious books. They don't teach just from the Bible, they teach from all of them. And I was gravitating to them because the way they explained heaven and hell to me. And I said, well, what is heaven and what is hell? And they said, heaven and hell is right where you are. You have a choice every day what that looks like. Heaven is being close to your source, whatever that looks like for you. Hell is being far from your source, right? So the choices you make every day determine where you find yourself in heaven and hell, right? So I had that, but when I left that after a while, not because of anything bad, life got busy and all the stuff, and I just kind of walked away from it. I was very in science. I'm a scientist, I'm a researcher, I'm in medicine. And for me, when I had this experience happen, I had no one to talk to. Nobody around me was part of this. Nobody. I was literally very by myself. I tried to go to work and talk to a colleague about it, and quite literally, she asked me if I needed a psych consult, right? Like she was serious. She's like, oh my God, do I need to admit you? Like,
horrible. I think that's part of the construct of this world that those are those people placed around us to keep us pulled down into the illusion so that you don't go waking up, because that's
well, I
what
mean, yes
happens.
and no, maybe. I mean, I don't necessarily think anybody's doing anything to us. I think it's easier to stay where everybody is because we've been taught that to go against the thing is to be ostracized, right? So we want to be the same because we feel like that's what we've been taught. I don't think she said that for any reason other than that's her worldview. She only understands the world through the lens of science. And so for her, when she was looking at me, she can only see me through the lens of science, which was telling her something was wrong with me, you know? Um, Through my awakening experience, I mean, my own husband, I've been married for almost 28 years, right? So I know my husband very well. He is not at all into any of this, right? He is very much opposite. And so when I started going through this, one of my biggest hurdles was being okay that he didn't get it because I wanted to tell him, I wanted to share it with him. I wanted him to see how amazing this was. I really wanted him to be a part of it. But every time I would try to talk to him about it, he would tune me out or, whatever. And it was really hard for me to just be okay with this is just my experience and that's okay. And I even made a video about that this morning, that one of the hardest things for people to get over is when you are excited about something to happen and you go and tell somebody and you get the blank stare and they're like, so? It can drain all the excitement from your manifestation. And we've been taught that we need the validation of someone else before it's real. And what we're trying to learn is that the validation comes from you, from the joy, from the excitement, from the love that you feel. And regardless if anyone else can actually receive that, you still have that. And hanging on to that is the most important thing. You can share it with someone, but don't share it with them and then let their perception of your experience ruin your experience. If I like ice cream and I'm eating ice cream and I try to give it to my kid and my kid spits it out, I'm not going to go, oh, well, you don't like it, so I'm going to not like it. I mean, that's what we do though.
Yeah, I think that's unfortunate because, like you said, there is this desire sometimes for us to be on the same page, especially in a situation like your own husband, you want
Mhm.
to all be as similar, I guess, as possible sometimes in the line of thinking.
Right.
And when you start to change, because it's normal, especially as we get older and our perspective of life changes, I think that's wonderful that you came to that conclusion that it's okay, they can just not understand it and I'm still going to be okay. And
Right.
for you, what does a daily I guess grounding or like, when you're having your days, how do you connect with source so
So
that
I have I'm a very routine oriented person. I have ADHD. So routine really serves me very well, right? So for me, I start my day the same every day. My alarm goes off half an hour before I actually have to be up out of the bed, regardless if that's 6 a.m. or 8 a.m. Half an hour before I have to be up out of the bed. Once that alarm goes off, I put in my earbuds and pull down my eye mask and I turn on a meditation. It doesn't matter if it's Joe Dispenza or whoever. I just pick one and turn it on and I start my day in that frequency. Then I get up, I start doing my thing, and then excuse me, one of the ways that my guides communicate with me is through music. So if you have an iPhone, what a thing that an iPhone can do is if you Shazam a song, if you hear a song and you hit Shazam, it will create a playlist of all those songs. So every time I hear a song that has resonance for me or I feel like is a message, I will hit Shazam, it goes on that playlist. In the morning, when I go into the bathroom to brush my teeth or take a shower or whatever, I open that playlist, I close my eyes, and I say, tell me a story, and I hit shuffle. And the first three songs that come up are an indication of what my day might unfold onto. Then, as I go into the Schumann stuff, what I do for that is I come in the room, I grab my cards, I take pictures of the graph, and I walk outside. And when I'm making my video, I am legitimately in a direct channel. Everything that's coming through is just in that moment coming through. The game changer for me has been realizing that meditation doesn't have to be 30 minutes of silence, right? Meditation is anything that gives you a sense of flow because the purpose of meditation is to entrain your energy to a calmer state so that you can actually receive the energy that's being offered to you as information and not just energy. Going back to the idea of photosynthesis, right? The sun is always out. Plants, when they use photosynthesis, turn the sun into sugar. Humans, when they use meditation, turn the sun's energy into information. Right? Meditation, the goal shouldn't be, I want to get a big message from source. It should be, I need a calmer space so I can always receive messages from source, right? So spreading your meditation out through the day can be very beneficial. 5-minute increments are super helpful. If you've got 5 minutes waiting in line at the grocery store, close your eyes, take a few deep breaths, center yourself, be present, right? If you are waiting for the movie to start with a friend, instead of scrolling on your phone, close your eyes, take a deep breath, center yourself. These small moments over time build up into entraining your energy into a more stable state so that you're not so at the mercy of everything happening around you.
Yeah, and like I said, I have different kinds of listeners, whether they prefer to do it as a prayer or meditation, but it's the same thing. It's calming
All the
yourself
same thing.
down that you can receive and see things, from a calmer perspective. And it works. It works because there's so many things that I think maybe you might fall into the trap of going, head on into certain things. And then if you start your morning off right, the rest of your day will feel better and will flow better.
Right.
So,
Well, it just goes back to law of attraction, right? Law
mhm.
of attraction doesn't care if you want it or not. If you're focused on it, you're going to get it. So if you start your morning, you wake up and the first thought you have is, oh my God, I have to go to this meeting with John. I hate John. And then you get up, you're going to stub your toe. Then something's going to happen with your toothbrush. And it's a domino effect because you've literally sent out the frequency of today is going to be a bad day. So law of attraction says, okay, here's reasons to think that. But if you start your day out going, today is going to be a great day, which is why I end my video with that every single day, then you are broadcasting the signal of today is going to be a great day. So law of attraction will say, okay, here's a reason to think that. Here's a reason to think that. Here's a reason to think that. Manifestation is not magic. It is resonance. That's all it is. Your physical brain cannot tell the difference if what you're picturing is now or in the future. So when you visualize and you feel that frequency and you feel that good emotion, your brain can't tell if that's now or then. All you're doing is bringing yourself into alignment with the frequency of some other thing that you have. So starting your day in that frequency of today's going to be a good day is the simplest way to get the ball rolling in the direction you actually want it to go.
Okay, well, and today for me was an excellent day because I enjoyed this podcast tremendously, and I want to thank you so much for coming on. And if anyone wants any more information about Erin, I will definitely be putting the links to everything in the description. And be sure to subscribe to sacredmindshift.com so that you never miss another important event or podcast. And thank you so much, Erin, for being with me on the show today.
Yes, absolutely. It was super fun. I really appreciate it. Thank you.